Welcome to Darkleaveswhisper. Tonight we wander down Hollow Street, where lanterns glow in the fog and the town seems abandoned. But something is always watching. If you dare to explore the supernatural, subscribe, leave a comment, and share this story. And remember, the shadows are always listening. Halloween night had a way of twisting the familiar into something unsettling, and Hollow Street was no exception. I spent the whole day laughing at my friend's dare. Abandoned streets, boarded up houses, thick fog rolling in like ghostly blankets. It sounded ridiculous, but standing there, lantern in hand, I felt a creeping doubt settle over me. Something about the air felt wrong. The fog clung to everything, curling around cracked streetlights and crumbling porches, swallowing the edges of the road. The houses loomed like silent sentinels, windows staring blankly as if they were observing me. My boots crunched over gravel, each step echoing far too loudly in the unnerving stillness. A flicker of light caught my eye, orange, soft, hovering above the cracked pavement. A lantern. Nobody holding it. My pulse quickened. I shook my head, trying to convince myself it was a trick of the fog, a reflection, something explainable. James, come see, one of my friends called from somewhere behind me, their voice thin, distant, almost swallowed by the fog. But I couldn't take my eyes off the lantern. It moved slowly, deliberately, stopping in front of a particularly dilapidated house. Its glow reflected off shattered windows, illuminating faded Halloween decorations, tattered skeletons, broken pumpkins, and a crooked scarecrow staring with hollow eyes. The whispers started thin, barely audible at first, carried on the wind. My name? James. James. I spun around, searching for my friends, but the fog swallowed them whole. Panic rose in my chest, cold and insistent. I wanted to laugh it off, to call out, to run, but something deeper held me in place. The lantern flickered again, and I noticed subtle details I hadn't before. There were handprints on the dusty windows of the abandoned houses, faint scratches along door frames, as if someone or something had tried to get out or in. The air was heavier now, thick with an unplaceable tension. My skin prickled and the hair on my arms stood up. I stepped closer. Each footfall seemed louder than the last, though there was no one around to hear it. The lantern floated slightly above the ground, guiding me toward the center of Hollow Street. Shadows twisted unnaturally across the cracked pavement, some longer than they should have been, some moving against the angle of the dim streetlights. The rational part of my mind screamed at me to turn back, but I couldn't. The pull was magnetic, insistent. I noticed the signs of past Halloween nights left to decay. An old pumpkin, hollowed and blackened, with a single rotting candle inside. Paper ghosts clinging stubbornly to walls. The skeleton of a scarecrow, stiffened and broken. Everything here told a story, but a story I didn't understand. Something about this place felt alive, waiting, watching, and I realized with a jolt that the lantern wasn't just leading me, it was expecting me. The fog thickened, swirling around my ankle. A faint cold draft brushed my neck like a hand that wasn't there. I turned, but no one was behind me. Only the lantern, gently swaying, ahead of me, and the whispers now growing louder, clearer. James, follow, follow. I felt a shiver run through me, a mixture of fear and irresistible curiosity. I had always been skeptical about ghosts, about the supernatural, but tonight, skepticism had no place. The fog, the lantern, the whispers, they were all too real to ignore. And then I realized, in a sinking, terrifying moment, Hollow Street wasn't abandoned. It was waiting. Waiting for someone to see it, to hear it, to feel it. And tonight, it had found me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. My hands were clammy, my lantern swinging slightly in my grip. I could no longer see the road behind me. The fog swallowed everything, leaving only the soft glow of the lantern and the pressing silence around me. Somewhere ahead, the street seemed to bend unnaturally, as if guiding me deeper into a world I shouldn't be entering. I should have turned back. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape the unseen eyes that surely watched from the fog. But something, fear, curiosity, or perhaps something older, drew me forward into the heart of Hollow Street, towards Lantern, toward whatever awaited me in the shadows. Tonight, the street had claimed me as its witness, and I knew that nothing would feel the same again. The whispers of Hollow Street were just beginning, and I had no choice but to listen. The fog had grown denser since I first stepped onto Hollow Street. Lantern in hand, I moved cautiously, every crack in the pavement and every shadow between the abandoned houses seeming to hold a secret. My heart thumped in my chest, louder than it should have been in the oppressive silence. At first, I thought I had imagined it, the flicker of movement at the edge of my vision. But then I saw them, shadows, tall and thin, drifting just beyond the glow of my lantern. They didn't walk like people. Their movements were fluid, almost floating, but undeniably intentional. Wherever I turned, they lingered, always keeping the distance just out of reach. Probably just my imagination, I muttered to myself, though the sound of my voice sounded foreign, swallowed by the fog. But the whispers had returned, growing louder, insistent. "James! James!" they called, echoing off the cracked walls of Hollow Street. The shadows seemed to respond to the voices, stretching toward them, stretching toward me. My pulse quickened, a cold sweat forming on my forehead. I remember the tales my grandmother used to tell, stories of spirits that waited in places abandoned by time, feeding on the fear of those who wandered too close. I laughed nervously at the thought. Ghost stories are just stories, aren't they? The lantern bobbed ahead, floating slowly toward a cluster of houses that leaned precariously toward each other, as if conspiring. The shadows began to follow more closely now, their dark forms moving in unnatural synchrony, circling the edges of my path. My footsteps faltered. I tried to convince myself to turn back, but the lantern pulsed gently, urging me onward. I reached the first house, its windows bored haphazardly, the paint peeling like curling leaves. The whisper shifted, layered, urgent. Remember, follow, see. I could hear my own breathing, ragged and quick. The shadows seemed to respond to my fear, stretching taller, curling around doorways, slinking along the edges of broken fences. Every instinct in me screamed to leave, to run back to a car, to abandon Hollow Street and its lantern forever. But I couldn't. The pull was stronger than fear, and some deep, inexplicable part of me wanted to know what was waiting. The street twisted ahead, narrowing into a lane flanked by towering houses whose windows glowed faintly, not with light, but with a shadowed luminescence that made me doubt my own eyes. I realized that the lantern wasn't just floating, it was guiding me. Toward what? I didn't know. Then I heard it. Footsteps, soft and uneven, following mine. I froze. The shadows paused at the corners of the street, but the footsteps continued, keeping pace. They didn't sound human. No one had been there, yet I could hear the crunch of gravel and the faint scrape of nails against wood. I tried to call out, to demand someone show themselves, but my voice caught in my throat. The fog seemed to swallow it whole, and then a figure appeared in the distance, silhouetted by the lantern's glow. At first, it looked like a man, but the proportions were wrong, too long in the limbs, too fluid in movement. It stopped suddenly, tilting its head toward me. The whispers became coherent for the first time. "James, you've come." A chill ran down my spine, cold as if the grave itself had breathed on me. My instincts screamed to flee, but my feet moved forward anyway. Every step was measured, cautious, as if negotiating with the unseen. I noticed then that the shadows weren't random. They were leading me. We were around corners, across broken sidewalks, past houses that leaned inward, almost conspiratorial. Each shadow seemed to embody a fragment of the street's memory, a lingering essence of Halloween nights long past, of townsfolk who had disappeared and never returned. By the time I reached the center of Hollow Street, I could see the full scale of the phenomenon. Lanterns hung in midair along the crooked road, each one swaying gently, illuminating a fragment of the past. Toppled pumpkins, decaying skeletons, faint handprints on the dust-covered windows. Shadows danced across the pavement, circling the lantern like guardians, or hunters. And in the center, hovering higher than the rest, was the lantern I had followed from the start. Its light pulsed like a heartbeat. The whispers rose to a crescendo, urgent, pleading, almost commanding. "Remember? Follow. See." I realized then that Hollow Street wasn't just abandoned. It wasn't just haunted. It was alive, watching, waiting, and it had chosen me to witness its secrets. A sudden gust of wind rolled through the street, carrying with it a faint smell of smoke and decayed leaves. The shadows shifted closer, circling me now, pressing in. And I understood, with a terrifying clarity, that I couldn't turn back, not yet. The lantern had led me here for a reason, and whatever awaited at the end of Hollow Street was going to reveal itself tonight. The lantern guided me down Hollow Street, weaving between shadows and fog, until I reached the house that seemed to dominate the narrow lane. It was larger than the others, its roof sagging, windows boarded but not completely. Gaps allowed faint, flickering light from the lantern to spill inside. Something about the structure felt intentional, as if it had been waiting for me all along. I approached slowly, boots crunching on loose gravel. The whispers had quieted, replaced by a low hum that seemed to emanate from the house itself. I paused at the front porch, noticing the faded Halloween decorations. Skeletons twisted unnaturally, cobwebs thick and sticky, and a pumpkin with a jagged, ominous grin. Its hollow eyes seemed to watch me. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay, smelling of rot and smoke. Wooden floorboards creaked beneath my feet, groaning with every step. The lantern floated just ahead, illuminating the walls lined with old posters, newspaper clippings, and photographs. Halloween celebrations from decades past, children in costumes, townspeople laughing, yet there was something off. Faces were blurred in the dim light, features indistinct, as though the images themselves were fading, erased by time and something unnatural. And then I saw the messages, scrawled across the walls in what looked like charcoal or ash, were words that made my stomach twist. Do not forget us. Do not leave the story untold. Follow the lantern. A cold breeze swept through the house, and the floorboards creaked behind me. I spun, but no one was there. Shadows twisted across the walls, stretching longer, thinner, almost reaching out. My lantern flickered, and I realized the shadows were moving independently, not just reacting to the light. I stepped deeper into the house, my heart hammering. The whispers returned, low and fragmented. James, remember? Follow. See. You are chosen. A staircase led upward, but I hesitated. The lantern pulsed at the base, as if urging me to climb. Finally, I took the first step. The wooden boards groaned, but held. Each step upward was a negotiation with the house itself. Dust rose in small clouds, swirling around my feet. At the top, a hallway stretched out, lined with doors that were slightly ajar, each revealing fragments of rooms frozen in time. Cobwebs hung in corners, furniture lay overturned, and faint decorations reminded me of Halloween's long forgotten. The lantern hovered in front of a door at the far end, its glow brighter now, almost alive. I approached and pushed the door open. Inside, the room was small, the walls covered with more cryptic messages, newspaper clippings about Hollow Street, and photographs of townspeople from decades ago. But something was wrong. Some faces were scratched out, others distorted, and in the center of the room was a figure, faint and shadowed, kneeling before a small, flickering lantern, identical to the one I carried. The figure lifted its head, eyes, empty black pits, locked on mine. A chill ran through me. The whispers coalesced into a single voice, resonant and commanding. Follow, witness, remember. The lantern will guide you, but the street has its own memory, its own judgment. Do you accept what it asks? I wanted to answer, but my throat was dry. Fear, curiosity, and some inexplicable compulsion held me there, rooted to the floor. The shadows seemed to ripple, moving closer, enclosing the room in a shroud of darkness that flickered only where the lantern's light touched. A sudden realization hit me. The lantern hadn't just brought me here. It had chosen me. I was no longer merely exploring Hollow Street. I was part of its story. The house, the shadows, the whispers, they were alive, and they were waiting for me to understand their purpose. I gripped my lantern tightly, its glow steady now. The figure at the center didn't move, but seemed to beckon me forward, urging me to step closer to uncover what the street and the house had long kept hidden. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape, but I knew I couldn't. Not yet. The fog outside pressed against the windows, thick and suffocating, carrying faint echoes of the past. Somewhere in the distance, the wind whispered my name again, and in that moment, I understood. Hollow Street wasn't just a place, it was a living memory, and tonight, I was its witness. I left the abandoned house, lantern clutched tightly, and stepped back onto Hollow Street. The fog had thickened further, curling around streetlights and the crooked houses like living tendrils. I tried to call out for my friends, but my voice was swallowed immediately by the dense air. I realized with a sinking feeling they weren't here. The lantern floated ahead, pulsating gently as if alive, and I noticed something horrifying. More lanterns had appeared. Small glows flickered between the fog, suspended in midair, illuminating shadows that weren't mine. Each one moved independently, swaying as if caught in a silent wind. The whispers returned, now layered, overlapping, echoing from every direction. James, follow, remember, see. I froze. The shadows that had stalked me before began to emerge more clearly from the fog. Tall, thin, fluid shapes, drifting along the edges of the street, almost gliding over the cracked pavement. Their movements were deliberate, choreographed, circling me, watching. My pulse quickened, every instinct screaming to run, yet my legs moved forward, drawn by the lantern's glow. The street seemed endless now, bending in ways that didn't make sense. Houses appeared, disappeared, their windows dark or faintly illuminated, their facades sometimes familiar, sometimes entirely alien. The lanterns pulsed brighter, almost beckoning me toward the center of the street, where a small square had formed among the decaying buildings. I stepped into the square, and the full scale of Hollow Street's haunting became clear. Dozens of lanterns hovered above the cracked pavement, casting dancing, flickering lights on the buildings, the skeletal decorations, and the shadows that moved among them. The whispers swelled into a chorus, overlapping voices, urgent, pleading, almost commanding. James, you are the witness. You must see, remember. A sudden gust of wind carried the scent of smoke and decayed leaves, brushing against my neck like fingers. I spun, but no one was there. The shadows swirled closer, circling the lantern, stretching toward me, yet never touching. The air was thick with anticipation, electric with the weight of something ancient. Then I noticed them, faces in the fog, pale, hollow-eyed, frozen mid-motion, as if caught in time. Children laughing in costumes, townsfolk waving, but all distorted, blurring in the mist. Some faces were familiar from the newspaper clippings in the house, others completely unknown. My stomach twisted. These weren't just memories. They were remnants, echoes of past Halloweens that had been trapped in the street, tethered by some force I couldn't yet comprehend. The lanterns pulsed again, and I realized they were forming a path, leading me somewhere. Every instinct told me to stop, to turn back, to abandon the street entirely. But the whispers, the glowing lanterns, the shadows, they wouldn't let me leave. Not yet. The street demanded I witness, demanded I follow, demanded I understand. I took a deep breath and followed the path. The fog swirled around me, twisting and coiling, sometimes revealing glimpses of movement just beyond my peripheral vision. Shadows darted between buildings, slipping through cracks in the walls, yet disappearing whenever I tried to look directly at them. My lantern illuminated fragments of messages scrawled on the pavement and walls. Do not forget. The story must be carried. The lantern chooses. The chilling realization struck me. Hollow Street wasn't merely haunted. It was alive, and I had been chosen to see its truth. The lanterns weren't just guiding me. They were testing me, drawing me deeper into the street's heart, deeper into a story that had never truly ended. As I reached the center of the square, the lantern's glow intensified, casting long, flickering shadows that moved in ways the fog alone couldn't explain. I felt a pressure in my chest, a weight of expectation, as if the street itself were judging me. The whispers crescendoed, urgent and insistent, echoing through the empty buildings. Follow, witness, remember, bear the story. I gripped my lantern tighter, knuckles white. Fear and curiosity war within me. I knew I had to keep moving forward, to follow the path the lantern had laid out, to uncover what Hollow Street had been keeping hidden for decades. Somewhere ahead, the fog thinned slightly, revealing a silhouette at the far end of the square. A figure stood beneath the largest lantern, motionless yet commanding attention. Its presence sent a shiver down my spine. I couldn't make out details. Its features were obscured by shadows, but I knew instinctively that this figure was at the heart of the street's haunting. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening, urging me forward. I took a hesitant step, then another, the lanterns guiding me closer. The air was thick, alive with anticipation, and I understood. The final revelation of Hollow Street awaited me just beyond that figure, and there was no turning back. I stepped closer to the figure beneath the largest lantern, every nerve in my body screaming in protest. Yet some deeper, unexplainable force urged me forward. The fog swirled around me, thick and suffocating, carrying whispers that rose to a deafening chorus. Witness, remember, the story must not be forgotten. The figure remained motionless, shrouded in shadows, but the lantern's glow illuminated just enough to reveal its shape. It was tall and thin, cloaked in rags that seemed to shift like smoke. Its face was hidden beneath a hood, yet I could feel its eyes, black, empty voids, piercing straight through me. A sense of ancient patience radiated from it, as though it had waited decades, maybe centuries, for someone like me to arrive. The other lanterns pulsed in response, floating closer, circling me like silent guardians or judges. The shadows on the ground writhed, stretching toward me, yet retreating whenever I moved, almost testing my resolve. My heart pounded, every instinct screaming to flee, but I knew I couldn't. The street had claimed me as its witness, and I had no choice but to see its story to the end. "You've come," a voice said, low and resonant, carried on the wind rather than from the figure itself. "You see Hollow Street as it truly is. Do you understand why it remains?" I think so," I stammered, though my voice sounded small and weak against the weight of the fog. It's trapped in time." The figure tilted its head, the motion slow, deliberate. The lantern pulsed brighter, illuminating the crumbling buildings and the scattered remnants of Halloween's past. Torn decorations, decayed pumpkins, faded photographs. Faces stare back at me from the fog, frozen mid-laugh, mid-wave, mid-motion, their expressions distorted yet familiar. "Yes," the voice whispered again, "this street remembers. It remembers every night that was forgotten, every soul that wandered and never left. And now, you are part of it, a witness to the eternal Halloween." I felt the fog pressing closer, whispering secret in unintelligible fragments. Shadows flickered around me, some taking shapes almost human, others twisting in impossible angles. The lanterns pulsed faster, casting jagged reflections across the cracked pavement. "You must carry it," the figure said finally, stepping aside to reveal a small stone well in the center of the square. Inside, faint golden light shimmered, like liquid fire. The lanterns guide, the shadows remember, and the well holds the memory. Leave with knowledge, or remain trapped forever. I approached cautiously, the whispers urging me forward, twisting in my mind. I looked down into a well and saw them. Faces of children, adults, townsfolk from every decade, all frozen in Halloween celebration, all trapped in a single eternal moment. The air hummed with sorrow and longing, yet it was beautiful in its own twisted way. I realized then that Hollow Street wasn't evil. It was memory. preservation, a town refusing to vanish. It needed witnesses, people who could see, who could carry the story forward. And now, that responsibility was mine. The figure reached toward me, hand outstretched, not threatening, but guiding. A single lantern detached itself from the cluster above and hovered near my chest, its glow warm, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Take it," the voice said. "Carry the memory. Never forget Hollow Street, or it will forget you." I hesitated only a moment before nodding, grasping the lantern. The moment my fingers touched it, a surge of energy ran through me. A flood of images, memories, whispers, and shadows. All of Hollow Street's Halloween nights converging at once. I gasped, staggered, and the fog shifted, pulling back slightly, revealing the outlines of the street as I had first seen it. The figure stepped back, dissolving slowly into the mist. The other lanterns drifted higher, swirling above before fading into the night. The whispers softened, becoming distant murmurs, as if Hollow Street was sighing in relief. I stood there alone in the center of the square, the lantern in my hand, its light steady. The fog remained, thick but less oppressive now. Hollow Street had released me, or perhaps it had merely entrusted me with its secret. I turned, retracing my steps through the street, each shadow and broken house now feeling less threatening, more remembered. I reached the edge of the fog, the first real light of the evening flickering through the trees. My friends were nowhere in sight, but I didn't care. I had the lantern, I had the story, and as I walked back to the car, I knew one thing for certain. Hollow Street would never leave me. Its whispers, its lanterns, its shadows, they were a part of me now, and I would carry its memory wherever I went. Somewhere behind me in the mist, a faint whisper carried my name one last time. Remember. And I did. Hollow Street doesn't forget. Lanterns flicker, shadows linger, and some nights are eternal. Thank you for listening to The Lantern in Hollow Street. Like, subscribe, and share, but keep your lanterns close and your eyes open. You never know what might be waiting in the fog.